Hi, I'm John Gagliano, Senior Director of Biopharm Catalyst.
Hello, I'm Sheff, known as Sheff Station, a 20-year vet in trading biotech stocks.
And this is Biotech Bulls and Breakthroughs. Just a reminder that we are not a registered investment advisory firm, and the views on this podcast are not intended to be financial advice. Invest at your own risk. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're listening in from. And welcome once again to another episode of Biotech Bulls and Breakthroughs. Today is August 19th, 2025, and we are extremely excited to have Sheff back on with us for this month, as we do every month. So welcome back, Sheff. Thanks so much for joining us. But before we get into our content, we're actually going to hear from an exciting guest, Billy Henry, who is the CEO and founder of the Northwest Association for Blind Athletes, which is the charity, as many of you know who follow us, that Sheff is really, really passionate about and has been affiliated with for a long time now. So we're going to hear from Billy just a little bit about the mission, what they're looking to accomplish, and hope you guys are able to find out a little bit more about it, and hopefully you're able to learn a little bit more about what they're looking to accomplish there. So we'll leave it to Billy for a couple minutes. We're really excited to have Billy Henry on, who is the CEO and founder of the Northwest Association for Blind Athletes. Many of you know this charity. It's a charity that Sheff is really passionate about. We have a link to it in the description on our YouTube channel and on our website. And we're really happy to have Billy on here to talk a little bit about the charity, what the mission statement is, what they're looking to accomplish, and also, kind of how he partnered up with Sheff on this to begin with. So, Billy, welcome, and take it away from here.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and share more about Northwest Association for Blind Athletes. First, just wanted to share a little bit about our connection with Sheff. I've had the honor of having Sheff as a partner in our mission and as a friend for over 13 years. Ironically, Sheff and I met in a photo booth line because he liked my tie and I liked his tie, and we were friends. We were friends ever since then. And when I was 21 years old, is when I met Sheff, and I had a vision of providing more opportunities. And from the day that I met him, he said, "How can I help? How can I get involved?" And he has been along the journey with us and by my side as a friend and as a partner for over 13 years. We've gone from serving about 100 people a year when I first met Sheff in it was 2012, so it's been even longer. It's been almost 14 years. To now delivering over 6,000 interactions to children, youth, adults, and military veterans who are blind or visually impaired. So just wanted to share a little bit about that connection because it's really special to me, and it's amazing what we've been able to do together. And I look forward to many more years of partnership and making an impact on people who are blind or visually impaired with Sheff. So with that, my name is Billy Henry, the founder and CEO of Northwest Association for Blind Athletes. I'm legally blind myself. I have a condition called optic nerve hypoplasia, which means I'm legally blind in both eyes. I've been like that way since birth. And I wanted to be able to participate in powerlifting with my friends. So in May 2007, at the end of my freshman year of high school, I invited 5 of my friends over to my parents' house in Southwest Washington, right across the bridge from Portland, Oregon, to be able to participate in powerlifting. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for individuals who are blind or visually impaired to participate in sport, but more so to build community, to build friendships, and to set and achieve goals. And that's what I wanted to do for myself and for my friends. So it started out with 5 of my friends coming over to my parents' house twice a week to participate. We participated in competitions. We improved our skills. We developed friendships. We had that as an outlet to have the same opportunities as our sighted peers. And I wanted to be able to provide that to all people who are blind or visually impaired. So fast forward to today, over the last 18 years, Northwest Association for Blind Athletes has transformed into a national leader that's focused on improving the quality of life for children, youth, adults, and military veterans who are blind or visually impaired. Our mission is to provide life-changing opportunities through sports and physical activity to individuals who are blind or visually impaired. But really what it's about is helping people who are blind build confidence, create independence, develop friendships, get involved in their community, and gain the skills, tools, and resources to reach their greatest potential in all areas of life. About 70% of people who are blind are unemployed, and about 30% live in poverty. So when you think about Northwest Association for Blind Athletes and the power of our mission, it's so much more than just sport. It's about using sport and physical activity and health and wellness as a catalyst for an overall improved quality of life, to inspire our athletes to get their first job, to pursue higher education, to get involved in their communities so that they can have that same access to resources and opportunities as their sighted peers. We serve individuals that are as young as 6 months old, and their families have recently learned that they're blind and they're getting to experience being in the water for the first time. We serve individuals that are in their 80s that have lost vision later in life. We serve people like me that have been blind since birth. It's all that I know, to people that have lost their vision in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond that are looking for a place to turn. At Northwest Association for Blind Athletes, we meet each individual where they're at to help them be successful in whatever they want to do. Our organization provides 600 in-person and virtual program events. We provide in a year, so we provide 600 events a year. We provide in-person services across Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana, and we provide virtual programs, 7 events a week to individuals who are blind across the US, with 1 athlete holding down the fort in South Africa and 2 athletes in Canada. So we have a global impact, and our programs are provided 7 days a week out of our studio in Vancouver, Washington. And our virtual programs provide that element of community, allowing people who are blind to be healthy in their homes, because many people who are blind are isolated, and it allows us to serve people across the nation, in addition to our flagship virtual programs here locally in the Pacific Northwest. As I think about the future, and what Sheff and I have talked about a lot, is how can we continue to increase our program so that we can serve every individual who's blind or visually impaired, so that we can help improve their quality of life, whether that be the confidence to regain their independence after they've lost their vision, or giving that 8th grader who's always wanted to ride a tandem bike that opportunity to feel the wind at their face and be with their friends and doing the same thing that their peers are. That's what Northwest Association for Blind Athletes is all about. It's about providing those opportunities. It's about helping people set and achieve goals and get a little bit better every day, and we're truly transforming lives. So as I wrap up here, and turn it back over to John and Sheff, the one thing I would leave you with is this. At Northwest Association for Blind Athletes, our programs are so much more than just sport and physical activity. They're truly changing lives, and I am beyond grateful for the opportunity to be here, and to again thank Sheff for all his support, and each of you for all of your support. It means so much to me. If you ever want to learn more about our organization, you can visit nwaba.org, or please feel free to reach out to me directly, and would love to share more with you about what we do. Thank you all so much.
Thanks so much, Billy. That was really an incredible story, and really incredible foundation that you have there. So we really appreciate you coming on, and something that actually Biofarm Catalyst donates to as well. So we're really happy to support the cause.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Another way to support Northwest Association for Blind Athletes is to join Sheff's private feed on X. Sheff provides a lot of information on his positions, when he's getting in and out of certain positions, his thoughts on the market, upcoming news, and it's a really key resource to know where we're at and what's happening in the market. To get there, individuals give $300 to Northwest Association for Blind Athletes. So if you were interested in getting on Sheff's private feed, you would go on to the page that's linked in his Twitter handle. Visit that page, give $300, enter in your handle. Our team will get a notification. We will send that notification to Sheff. Sheff will then add you, which will then give you access to his page. And the really fun and unique thing about his page is Sheff is posting literally 7 days a week on where the market's at, what positions he's getting in and out of, and really what's happening. So by being a part of that page, you're accomplishing two things. You're learning what Sheff is up to and where he's at, and then you're also supporting Northwest Association for Blind Athletes for only $300 a year. That's a tax-deductible donation to support our mission while learning a great deal from Sheff. So if anyone is interested in that, you can visit Sheff's page on X. You can reach out to me directly or visit the Northwest Association for Blind Athletes webpage as well.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Billy.
Awesome. Thank you all so
Awesome,
much again
Billy.
for the opportunity. Sheff, thank you again.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
All right, Sheff. Well, really great to hear from Billy. Billy Henry. I know you've known Billy for a really long time, and it sounds like a tremendous organization. Biofarm Catalyst actually contributes to it as well. So it was really great to have him on, and sounds like what you guys are doing with the organization is great. So thanks for helping facilitate having him on.
Yeah, thank you very much for having him on. And it's you know, they do good work with helping young people who are blind or visually impaired. So yeah, thank you for having Billy on and sharing the mission. And now we'll look forward to talking about the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we all know, it's never a dull week or a dull couple weeks in the biotech markets. Obviously, we kind of are coming off of earnings season, but I guess just in kind of in hotter news, obviously we saw some stuff come out with Viking Therapeutics today. So, do you want to talk about that real quick for a minute, just because it's top of mind?
Absolutely. And Viking was early on, it's been one of the hot stocks in the biotech sector. A mid cap that you know many people have talked about it being acquired by large pharma. Um, for the simple fact that they're in a space that they've continued to grow. And they had data that came out today on their oral obesity program that was, the market saw it as discouraging, and they had a 28% dropout rate in just 3 months. Um, with one of their products. And so one of the analysts for Mizuho had basically said, um, and I'll read what he said. He said the data looks inferior to Lilly on almost all metrics, and the thing to consider here is that patients discontinued at such a high rate over 13 weeks versus Lilly's drug in the mid 20% range, but over 72 weeks, a much
Mm-hmm.
longer trial, and therefore Lilly looks far better head to head. This probably shutters hope for Viking, a big time player in the oral obesity market, over the medium to near term. Pipeline and or better versions needed to get investors and patients more interested. Lilly could bounce a bit early, but oral weight loss programs continue to be highly controversial in terms of how they are perceived by the street. A tough day for retail investors ahead that have been pumping this thing like a 1991 Reebok D Brown shoe. So obviously, there wasn't a lot of he definitely didn't hold back there in terms of
Yeah, didn't mince words on that one.
no, no. But I think the market, I mean, I think the market got hit a little bit in terms of the biotech market. Um,
Yeah.
Indexes, and but I think they'll bounce back. I mean, it's been really hot as of late, particularly which we'll discuss in the small and mid cap space, where catalysts have been significant. And I think investors probably haven't used biopharm catalysts as consistently as they have probably within the last 30 to 60 days, because every single day it seems like a catalyst is getting hit that's been
Yeah.
on the list. And so I'm looking forward to discussing those.
Yeah, absolutely. And just around Viking, I mean, it's interesting because it's definitely a company that we've received a fair amount of questions on. It seems to be a company that has been tracked pretty closely, obviously, just given all of the attention around obesity. I mean, where do you think like a comment like that and some of the data that came out, where does it leave a company like Viking, right? I mean, are they and what does that really mean from an acquisition or a target standpoint for them? Because that was always something that was being discussed, is were they going to be acquired for their program, from one of the bigger players, right, to be able to compete within the GLP-1 or the obesity space. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's interesting because I think it gives pause from the simple fact that there was such a high dropout rate, and these therapies were being looked at as being safe long term. So, I mean, Ozempic and some of these medicines, um, even in the short term where people might lose a significant amount of weight, we still don't have the long-term data on these products. And so I think it really gives pause to the industry as a whole because, people are going to scrutinize, investors definitely, and companies are going to really scrutinize the data that comes out because they're not going to want to, harm, their patients over the long term. And we still don't know, after seeing Viking, and we still don't know, what the future holds for those agents long term. So, um,
Yeah.
it's not like a Lipitor. It's not like a cholesterol agent that's been out for a number of years where you're lowering cholesterol. There's a less than 1% incidence of rhabdomyolysis. What you're going to get with Lipitor, Pravachol, Mevacor, all the HMG-CoA reductase inhibitors that have been out for years. Those are medicines that we stay on. The diabetes medicines that we stay on. The Ozempic, some people need it and some people don't. So, it's a lifestyle medicine, but it's also medicine for obese people that really need, to use it. But the problem is where do we see that fitting in long term? And does it end up compromising the overall health of the patient? We don't know. And I think
Hmm.
that's why the market is kind of shocked right now, because I think a lot of small companies I talked about, Vivani Medical, which is trying to get into that space with a device. There's many different companies that are trying to become players so that big pharma can come in and take them over. And so I think Lilly feels pretty confident where they are right now after this Viking news came out. So I think people are going to just you walk very very trepidly and not knowing what's to occur moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It should be interesting to see how the market rebounds from that, just again, given the attention that we've seen with it. So, and certainly puts, Lilly in a very favorable spot as kind of the player to come out on top, right, in this whole race for GLP-1 and obesity drugs. So, it'll be interesting to see
It
for
puts
sure.
them up there like you said. You have Lilly, you have Novo Nordics.
Yep.
Good RX CEO, was talking about a GLP-1 deal with Novo Nordics, recently. So you have, more players that are still trying to come into the space and merge with larger companies. So you've got Good RX and Novo Nordisk. So you've got Lilly that has their drug, but do they end up partnering with a smaller mid cap bio that they see is going to enhance their presence in the space? I think time will tell, but this definitely
Yeah,
gave pause.
absolutely. Just kind of touching back to we're obviously kind of coming off of earnings season where a lot of companies were reporting, and I think it's worth reiterating that one of the most interesting aspects of trading in biotech is the fact that you have these catalysts, you have the clinical trial data, the dates that this data is going to be released, you have the PDUFA dates, which you can very clearly track. And these are catalysts that are not related to earnings. And it sort of makes the case for this being a very, I guess, tradable industry, in the sense that you don't have to rely on earnings like you do for a lot of other industries. So I mean, I just wanted to reiterate that, and just I know that you've always been really passionate about catalysts, and my understanding is you don't really, take a look at earnings when it comes to biotech, because a lot of these companies, frankly, are pre-earnings, right? They're not really, they're not really making anything yet, right? And so I guess, I just wanted to, for our audience on the call, I wanted to hear from you to the degree that you pay attention to earnings. Like, was there anything that came out of this earnings season that made you optimistic, pessimistic, or anything that was surprising to you? Or, are you really just looking at it from the perspective of these companies tend to update their milestones and when these catalysts are going to occur during earnings season, and that's why it's important, but the earnings themselves doesn't really matter for the industry too much?
100%. And I think the thing that's really important as well that we find out is we find out the health of the company. So if you're looking at a company that's looking to get bought out, it's important to note whether they have long-term debt, if they
Yep.
have cash in the bank. Some of these small cap stocks have 150, $200 million cash, or they're trading at book value, and there's zero debt. And so you get to see during earnings season, not necessarily whether they're making money, but if they're stockpiling cash, so that they put themselves in a position to get bought out. And so,
Hmm.
like you talked about, you see the milestones, you see the catalysts, and then you go and you see where the company says, "Hey, we're sitting on $100 million in cash," and then you start to say to yourself, "Okay, can they make it to their milestone? Can they make it to their catalyst?" Because if you see a
Yep.
bunch of catalysts rolling out and you say, "Oh, wow, they have a catalyst in 3 months, but they have $5 or $10 million in cash," and they're going to have to use their ATM, you're less you're less likely to maybe want to play that catalyst, because you're afraid
Yep.
that they could end up running out of cash ahead of the catalyst. And you know, if they do that, it will kill a run for a stock, especially a small or mid cap stock that where traders love to trade around those dates and the timelines.
Absolutely, and it's great. It's great insight. I mean, it's a really good point. I mean, you don't want to completely not pay. Obviously, the company's financial health is important, but it's just a little bit different when you're talking about biotech, right? You're much more concerned with debt, and you're much more concerned with the cash runway, how much how many months of cash they have left, right? And that's going to be the pieces that you're putting together alongside the catalyst that they have, and the pipeline that they put together. So it's a little bit of a different picture than some of the other industries, as I mentioned. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely. The other thing is, too, during earnings, you see, you hear of news of new investors. Like a company might say, we had a new investor, Rosalind Advisors, or we had a new investor, RA Capital or Infinity Advisors. You start to see, you know who's starting to put money into those companies, or what partnerships have developed, because they'll go over past milestones and what they've done up until the future milestones. So you're able to see and check the box and say, "Hey, as an investor, were they able to do what they said they were going to do based on
right, right.
previous milestones?" And if so, that I think it gives that company a lot of credibility. It's like, "Oh, we've got an investor, with Orbimed, that came in last quarter and took a 10% position." It definitely makes you feel comfortable, where you're going to be investing if they're hitting those milestones.
Absolutely. Um, no, that's a great perspective. Just switching gears a little bit. I mean, obviously, it's crazy to think that we're almost through August, kind of approaching the end of the traditional summer, in the sense that Labor Day is right around the corner in the
Mhm.
U.S. And um, you know, I guess going into this kind of next season, right? Going into Q3 and Q4, obviously, what conferences are you like excited about? Let's say second half of the year here, the last third of the year, let's just say.
Yeah, the conferences that I'm really looking forward to are, the American Society of Hematology in early December, and then the San Antonio Breast Cancer Conference, which is in the same week.
Hmm.
Those are two conferences in December that you know we see the companies start to share in Q4. Whether they're going to have abstract presentations, or they're going to have oral presentations where they're going to get up and discuss their clinical findings, or if they're going to have plenary sessions. And so a lot leads up to what's going to happen in the fourth quarter when they start releasing this information, typically in mid to late September. So and it gives investors a big appetite for those companies that they know are going to have significant data. And sometimes you have small cap companies that could end up having an oral presentation or having a plenary session that are typically reserved for the big companies like Merck or Pfizer, that could sneak in there. And so, I think this year there's going to be no, I mean, I think there's going to be some exceptions that are going to slide in there and do really well. So it'll be interesting to see. like companies
Absolutely.
like Maris and these smaller cap to mid cap companies that are going to be in the breast cancer space. So interesting stuff.
Very cool. Yeah, and obviously that's something alongside the catalyst is you have the catalysts themselves, but a lot of these catalysts are presented at these conferences, which is why they're so important. You mentioned the two in December, and then obviously we've got the huge JP Morgan healthcare conference at the beginning of January every year, which kind of sets the stage for the rest of biotech for 2026. So will be interesting to kind of see as we head into the end of the year what takes place and how some of these results turn out at these conferences. So always like to just kind of stay on top of what you're thinking with respect to that. Um, I guess really I mean, kind of last question, just general market related, but you mentioned that there's been, a lot of catalysts. You and I were talking before the call. There's been a lot of catalysts that have taken place over the last several months. You mentioned a lot of folks using Biofarm Catalyst over the last 30 or 60 days because there's been a lot of readouts, and there continue to be obviously important regulatory decisions, PDUFAs, et cetera. You know, and you've had clearly had some success in some of what you've been trading. What is your general sentiment going into the second half of or I should say, well, we're already in the second half, but going into later 2025 and into 2026 for the industry? Are you still pretty optimistic as you kind of have been?
I am, and the reason being, third quarter has always been a slowdown. Um, you know, Not sure why, but 3 out of the last 4 years, it hasn't been typically a quarter that has outperformed the other quarters. But this third quarter has been extremely successful, and I think because you still have a lot of decisions that are pending with the FDA. I think the backlog. Um, in the past is starting to catch up where decisions are being made rather quickly. Um, we've had a lot of change at the FDA. We've had change at CBER, and we're seeing a lot of decisions made in July where there's into phase two meetings. There was two in July that we of stocks that we had spoke about in our last podcast, and there's
Mm-hmm.
there are upcoming into phase two meetings in August and September as well, which are going to give companies the opportunity to go into phase three and have strong investor vote of confidence that wow, these companies are moving forward, and that the FDA is communicating with them so that they see a potential for approval down the road. And change can sometimes throw off biotech investors because we have this thought process in our head where phase one, phase two, phase three, and immediately should go to approval. But we've seen a tougher FDA, a leaner FDA, but also, Macari has talked about, really focusing in on, orphan drug companies with, that have a clinical unmet need. And, we're seeing some of those companies start to present themselves. And I'll look forward to discussing some of those like OS Therapeutics, and other companies where you're seeing products being developed that have in markets that are significantly untapped, like the osteosarcoma market. So I think, the FDA in its new form is definitely communicating more. CRLs are going to be discussed more of notes of why a company got a CRL as opposed to waiting for the company to decide whether they want to share specifics on their CRL or not. There's more transparency there, and I think that's going to be good. I think investors are confident from that, and because of that, you have more investors investing in the small and mid cap space. Particularly, July was the momentum month for the third quarter. We're seeing that push forward into August, and I think September we're just gonna set a blaze into the fourth
Absolutely.
quarter.
That's great, and I'm sure everyone listening is excited to hear that, and certainly hopes for that same outcome. So, um,
Absolutely.
But yeah, let's jump into it then. Let's jump into some of the catalysts. So, what are you, kind of what are you tracking for, for the next several months out here? What are you excited about?
So, at this, July, was a blaze. It worked really well with a lot of the small to mid cap plays, and as we've moved into the beginning of August, um, we had Nixoa, which we were waiting on 510K approval, ticker symbol NYXH. Um, that got approval. It's
Hmm.
trading in the $6 range now, but on approval, it was up near 850. So from seven, so that was really good. Pharmathere, that was a play that just got approved, ticker symbol PHRRF. Um, we were in that one from 17 cents on approval. It hit 55 cents. Obviously, it's a small cap. It pulled back to 27 cents, but it actually held above 40 cents for two consecutive days after it was approved. So those folks that were in the 17, 18 cent range still had 100% gain. So that was one, that we were excited about. CGTX is one that, they went from 60 cents to $1.30 on FDA minutes, then it pulled back to a dollar, and then they discussed, their clinical trial that they were going to have for the Shine study for Alzheimer's, and now we're waiting on two catalysts. Still, we're waiting on IND acceptance, which should happen before August 29th. And the reason that should happen before August 29th is because Coya Therapeutics, um, Hoya received word from the FDA in July because the FDA didn't meet the July 25th 30-day IND acceptance, that the FDA was short-staffed, they were running behind, and it wouldn't occur until August 29th. Well, oddly enough, CGTX had filed their IND on June 25th, the same day that Koya did. So that same information would hold true for an IND for CGTX for their Shimmer study in Lewy body dementia. So that should happen before the 29th. That'll be a significant catalyst. And then you have the FDA breakthrough, which should have occurred by August 25th. But again, they're running behind. So if they're looking at 30 days as out, as they've shared, with Koya and in their decision making, we should hear breakthrough designation by the end of September. So
Oh wow.
IND
Okay.
acceptance before August 29th, breakthrough designation in Lewy body dementia before September. So those are two catalysts. That stock has been a great tradable stock. We've been talking about it on this podcast since July when it was in the high 50s, low 60s. And it's gone over a dollar, pulled back, gone over a dollar. Now it's setting, higher highs as we wait for those catalysts, which I think should send it even higher. So
Absolutely. And I think also, Chef, the another important thing to kind of reiterate is you mentioned about breakthrough designation drugs, right? Breakthrough designation orphan drugs. The designation that these drugs have is extremely important. And my guess is that you are screening for these to some degree as well, right? You're looking for drugs that might have that designation. That's something that we do track on Biopharm Catalyst, so folks are able to actually see which drugs have a particular designation associated with them, and that can really kind of narrow down the list in terms of what they're looking to filter for.
Absolutely. And it also it becomes a premium for a company because, the FDA breakthrough designation is designed to, accelerate the development and review of these, drugs and biologics intended to treat, serious and life-threatening conditions. So anytime you get that breakthrough designation, you're definitely setting yourself apart from other companies. And expeditiously, obviously the communication with the FDA is much more consistent and precise, in because there's a need to pull those drugs to the market. So CGTX is still one that is in play. um, and it's been in play because the dates have been pushed out, but it's been good for investors. One where we talk about, we talked about, and this is the final one I've talked about, that it's in August, that just happened. And then I'll move forward with the others, is ENLV, Enliven. Um, so ENLV, back in July, they gave a timeline um, of August 18th, where they were going to have a conference and discuss their data that they had in moderate knee osteoarthritis. At the time, the stock was $1.20. So, fast forward to last Friday, um, which was the weekend before Monday when they announced their data, and the stock, climbed from, $1.20 to, close on Friday at about 220. So it closed at 220. Then after hours, it was 190. And then they had their conference on Monday. And in the pre-market, it spiked to, as high as $2.60. So it was 100% gain from when the company first announced. And we were discussing on the podcast about, that data. So that was really positive. Now moving forward, you talk about some of the ones we're looking at. IMRN, Imuron. Um, they are supposed to have an IND submission. They were supposed to have a submission in August, and they were supposed to have preclinical data in August. That got pushed to September. So now, um, the CEO had a conference call a couple days ago, and I listened to it last night. And that IND submission is going to be end of September, but they're still waiting on Traveland data, which is data done by the U.S. Health Department, and that data should be out in October. So it's 522 patients. They're just culminating the data right now. They're expecting that data to be positive, and then they have catalysts in the fourth quarter. So, and I like where that's at. That stock is $1.75, $1.80. It hasn't run yet. I think, September, in anticipation of October data, um, is going to, really send it. And they already sell Travelan on Amazon and on, at Walmart. And so their sales, typically I don't follow earnings, but their sales were tracking really nicely at $10 million
Yeah.
dollars in sales, which for small cap company like that is pretty significant. Um, then the one that I really like, and I've talked about, and we talk about specific dates that traders can trade around. I talked about ENLV because they said August 18th. We're talking about CGTX because they're giving date frames. Well, this other one is CGTX, um, or not CGTX, excuse me, OSTX. I'm stuck in. So
That's
yeah,
all right.
OSTX, OS Therapeutics. So the reason why OS Therapeutics is that has really moved, and they have an end of phase two meeting with the FDA on August 27th. Now, the reason that's significant is because they um, they have an interphase two meeting that if the outcome that's discussed is the clarity around their rolling BLA, which is what they're looking for, then the timeline around approval should be end of December. And if they get approved by the end of December, they'll get a priority review voucher. And priority review vouchers typically sell between 150 and 200 million dollars, and the market cap for that company is well under 100 million dollars. And what do they have that's so significant, and why the end of phase two meeting? They have a drug for osteosarcoma in dogs and adults. So the number one killer of dogs outside of automobiles is osteosarcoma. And so you
Mm.
you finally have a drug that treats osteosarcoma in dogs, um, and then you have a drug that treats humans for osteosarcoma, and it's the same drug. So the FDA has given them priority review. Um, they have given them, obviously osteosarcoma is a very rare cancer that affects the bone. And so the data that they had has already been significant. They came out with data in June that showed, statistical significance. And so now it's just meeting with the FDA and the FDA giving them clarity with regard to their upcoming phase 3 clinical trial. So that is going to be a catalyst, that August 27th date. So that's definitely one to keep on the lookout. And then we start to look at a PDUFA play that I like, that has already resubmitted. They had a CRL back in early 2025. It's Outlook Therapeutics, and they are going to have a drug for glaucoma, and it's reformulated bevacizumab, which is it's a prior oh gosh, what's the company? Oh, I just went blank on the company. But anyway, it's a drug that been reformulated, and they have done all the CMC manufacturing requirements. They've put in all the clinical studies that the FDA has asked, and they have a PDUFA date of August 27th. Now, it's run quite a bit. I don't know what it did today, but I know it had been up. Um, it was up to 275 yesterday. I still think on approval it goes much higher. Um, and that's one. I don't own it, but that's one that I'm definitely watching that one. So it pulled back a little today at 260, but that one is going to get approval. There's not a lot of complications with it. It's really simple. The FDA has already spanked them twice. So
Hmm.
so the fact that they've told them you have to go back to the drawing board and get us what we need, the communication has obviously become closer and tighter with the FDA. So two acceptances, which I like as catalyst plays. One is GRCE, Grace Therapeutics. So Grace submitted their NDA to the FDA on June 25th. And the FDA is supposed to get back within 60 days of accepting their NDA and then giving them a PDUFA date. So that should be August 25th. So that is coming up very shortly. Now, why is that such an important catalyst? Well, once they hit that milestone of getting acceptance by the FDA, they're going to be able to demand the exercise of warrants that they have to shareholders that could potentially generate $8 million in revenue or profit following the NDA acceptance, and about 15 million following approval. Um, assuming the warrants are in the money for this 7.6 million, which they are right now. The following normal regulatory timelines, that this first milestone should be reached here in the next week or so. So I expect that to get acceptance from the FDA, and that's going to really help the stock price, because they're a low float company. They have very few shares outstanding, and the company hasn't really run a lot, but I think they will off of that news. The other company in a similar position with NDA acceptance is ACHV. So we're waiting to hear. They also put in their submission on June 25th. And so they should hear acceptance for a smoking cessation drug that they have. Um, so we're waiting on that. That's the same timeline as Grace Therapeutics. So those are two companies that I'm watching the final ones in the August timeframe. So as we move over into September, things heat up as well, because typically September, companies are pulling their information together for these conferences that are going to occur at the end of the year. But what we're seeing in September is, ahead of these conferences, companies are releasing information that is going to be, really company enhancing for these, for these companies. So one I'm looking at now is Paul, Mary, Victor, Paul, PMVP, and PMVP Pharma. Um, they're a company that has, we spoke about small cap companies that have little debt and just a ton of cash. They have $165 million in cash. They have a runway to the end of 2026. But what do they have that's significant and it's coming up? Well, they have an inner analysis of their drug study in TP53 tumors. So these are drug agnostic tumors. So they don't they can be, for colorectal, they can be for prostate. I mean, they've shown, it doesn't matter what the tumor type. If you shut down the TP53 tumor, or you shut down that gene, you can have a significant effect. And so they have interim analysis from their phase 2 Pinnacle trial that's expected, with 50 patients with 18 weeks of follow-up. That data is expected to be released on September 10th, so day after my birthday. So that, yeah, right. So, and I own that stock. I really like that stock. There's a lot of big investors in that stock. And that stock should do well. I'm expecting, because there's a specific catalyst date, that it should run up into that. But
Hmm.
I also think, because it's a single study, open label, I mean, you have a lot of things that I like to look for in studies, especially early on. I don't like double blind, placebo controlled, where the company doesn't know who's getting the drug, and what patients are getting it and what patients aren't. So I like the clinical study setup here. And it could be one that's going to run up significantly before the data. So I like that. Um, the other one is REVB, and that's Revelation Bio, and they're going to have data in chronic kidney disease and acute kidney injury. And basically, their data was supposed to come out in July, but they had it extended because they have a total of 5 cohorts that were enrolled in 3 clinics in the U.S. And they have several study data sets that are expected in here over the next few weeks, where they're going to talk about safety parameters, change in hematologic parameters, in vitro evaluation of the inflammatory response, different markers that are easier to attain and to hit than, definitive markers, like what you expect in a phase 3 study, like, statistically significant reduction in pain or something like that. These markers, I followed, one of the analysts, John Vander Mosten from Zacks, and he said expect positive data. I don't think that's built in to this catalyst, but I think it should be. This company has less than 1 million shares in the float. They have less than 2 million shares outstanding. So, and you have it right there. Yeah, 1.7 million shares,
Yeah.
1.6 million the float. I love that. I love being able to see that when you're scrolling down. And you know, that data is pending. And so again, that's a late August, September catalyst that could really accelerate the shares from 253. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that. Um, so moving on, there's Rally Bio, ticker symbol RLYB. And I like Rally Bio because, again, it's another situation where you've got phase 1 pharmacokinetic data, um, and you've got 2 cohorts that you're expecting data from. You're expecting data. It's open label data. It's cohort 1 in the third quarter, so it should be in September, and then you have cohort 2 data in the fourth quarter. Um, it's a company with almost 50 million in cash. Their biggest shareholder is Johnson and Johnson. So, we talked about what I look for in smaller to mid cap companies, as I look for other pharmas that are large shareholders. It often speaks to the quality of their pipeline if you have a company like Johnson and Johnson that's one of the largest shareholders in the company. Um, that stock over the past few weeks has gone from 45 cents to the mid to high 50s. But once that data starts being released, with their cash position being the way it is, with them having no debt, with their having their partnership, I see that stock, really doing well and going over $1. I clearly see that, with the low share structure. You know, you have less than 30 million shares of the float. You've got 40 million shares outstanding. And this is the time, Rally Bio had been a high flying stock. Excuse me, but they had a drug that had gotten discontinued. It was in, mothers expecting, and it ended up having some complications. So they had to do away with that drug and go to their pipeline and see what else they had. And you know, um, this lead asset they're going to be sharing data on, I think, is going to be really important. Um, let's look at Kappa. Kappa is one that KAPA. That's one. Kairos. That's one that
Yep.
that we played in July. Um, we knew the safety data was going to be in July. We knew the efficacy data was going to be in September. And excuse me, the safety data came out and was clean. Went from 60 cents to almost $2. Went to $1.85. It's still maintained. It's been able to hold over $1. It was $1.30 last week. It's come down to around the $1.10, $1.15 mid range, but be looking forward and expecting data in September on, in metastatic resistant prostate cancer. Um, and it's used with, apalutamide, and the whole thing is to reduce the toxicity associated with that therapy by itself. So in combination with Kairos's drug, they're hoping to show some significant progress. So when that data is coming out, we don't know. We just know that it will be in September, as the CEO has expressed, ENV 105. And so I think that data is going to be positive. It enrolled early. The safety was outstanding. It's in the prostate cancer space, and I just, it's another study that is really trending toward being positive. So I like Kappa. That data is in September in prostate cancer, and that's one to watch. The other one that I really like and I own is, and I do want to go back. I own PMVP, I own REVB, I own RLYB, I own some Kappa, and the one that I'm going to talk about now is Sam Tom Tom Kitten, so STTK. And we talk about INDs. They filed their IND in July, and we're just waiting for acceptance. I believe they filed it in the late July timeframe, like around July 22nd, 23rd. That should get IND acceptance in August, and it should run. I think it's going to run to 150. 52-week low, I think on this stock is around 70 cents, or it's close to 70 cents. So if we're looking at where it's at now, oh yeah, perfect. If we're looking at where it's at now, it just climbed over $1 in the last few days. So it's up about, it's up about 20%. So a little over 20%, I'd say 25%, but it still has a ways to go on that IND acceptance. Once they get IND acceptance, they've already talked about the fact that they expect to initiate phase 1 studies in September, which means they're clearly expecting the IND to get accepted so that they can start initiating the clinical trials, because they can't without the acceptance from the FDA. So that is a catalyst that I think is going to do well for the share price. It's imminent. So it's any day now. We don't know, because they didn't put on their 10Q when they were doing their earnings. They didn't put what day they filed, as some companies do. They just said, we filed in July. So I'm expecting that soon. The other stock as well is ARTL, Artello. And Artello's going to they have the CARES study, the phase 2 CARES study that should happen in September. We should have data. Um, we've seen this stock in July go from $6 to $30, when they basically just said that they had um, a new a new a new drug entity that they were presenting. They didn't even have data. They just said, "Hey, we're in this new space," and that we saw the stock go from $6 to $30. I think having a 1.2 million float helped because as you see investor interest and them start to drive investor interest, yeah, then you start to see more shares get traded, and obviously it increases the demand, which fewer shares increases the share price. So I think that phase 2 care study in anorexia and cachexia in cancer patients is going to be positive. So we could see um, another resurgence of that stock here in the month of September. So keep an eye on that. I don't own shares of that. I'm not sure when the data is going to come out, but it's one that I'm watching. I may end up purchasing that. And
Hmm.
if you guys are on my private feed, you'll know, if when I get into that and when I'm not into it. So definitely take a look at that. um, ICCM. I've been talking about ICCM um, since last year. Now it's in a wait mode. Ice Cure Medical. Um, they're one of the companies that they're expecting. Um, they're expecting approval of their ProSense in women with low risk breast cancer. And so again, they had an advisory panel in November of 2024. Now what they're waiting on, and that was positive. Now what they're waiting on is just the FDA to review their phase 4 post marketing study for this ProSense. Once they say, hey, it's good to go, protocol's good to go, then the FDA can approve them. And I think the company has had to, unfortunately, they did an offering with some of their highest investors at $1. It was, and then it oversubscribed twice in terms of those shares and having being able to raise money with some of their largest investors as well as individual investors. The problem is that I see over the past few weeks, people have gotten impatient. They've started to exit. Last week the stock got as low as 80 cents, and then on Friday it closed at 92.93. This week it's pulled back a little to 85, 86. So I think by the end of the year, they're going to have approval. I think in September, they will have approval, but I don't know that. And they haven't given a specific time frame because it's all up to the FDA. But I still like ICCM for their 510K approval for breast cancer for ProSense. So that's definitely one to watch. Um, the next three I wanted to talk about are, COCP is one that I don't have, but I'm watching right now. Um, they have a specific time frame on that stock. They're going to be presenting on September 11th. They're going to be doing a presentation, oral direct acting antiviral CDI 988 for norovirus infection prevention and treatment. They're going to be at a large conference and they're going to be presenting data. So I see that stock potentially moving because that's going to be some significant data for that date. So, if people were looking at catalyst traders are saying, hey, that might be a date that I can trade around. I might get into that now because, the stock is, I think, at $1.50 and change or something like that. Yeah, there it is. Oh, $1.53. So, that could move up into that September 11th data because it is a specific date that traders can trade around. It's a stock with a low float, 7 million, only 10 million shares outstanding. So any interest in that stock and the volume in that stock's going to really, really move. So I like that one as well. Don't own it, but I'm watching it. The final two I was going to touch on are ONCY and Oncolytics Biotech. This one, they've got there's a strategy shift position for their drug Pila for late stage trial and first line metastatic pancreatic ductal carcinoma. They are supposed to be meeting with the FDA. They have a meeting with a Type C meeting by the end of third quarter, so the end of September. That's going to allow them to discuss, their data and they're going to have the minutes from that meeting and talk about potentially having one study versus two studies, to get approval for their drug, uh, for pancreatic cancer. So, it's right at $1. We know that they're going to meet with the FDA at the end of September. So that's a significant catalyst, especially when you're dealing with one of the, other than, biliary tract cancer and ovarian cancer. I mean, one of the fastest, cancers, that spreads is pancreatic. Most of the time, people don't know they have it until they go to the doctor and they have it, and then it's too late. So that's some good information that's going to be coming out in September that people need to know about, is the meeting with the FDA. And it,
Yeah.
it speaks to the theme I talk about with meeting with the FDA and getting clarity on your pipeline and what the FDA thinks of your pipeline. A lot of times those notes can be deal breakers or deal makers for a lot of these companies. It helps to advance discussions and potential partnerships with other larger companies that are looking for a phase 3 drug candidate that they can potentially take to market eventually. Um, and then the final one is SCYX, and that's a September play as well. Um, the dosing started in the phase 1. They have a phase 1 single ascending dose and a multiple ascending dose study in SCY 247, and that they're expecting data from that trial to be released in the third quarter. So that should be coming up here soon, within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Not a hard catalyst in terms of a specific date, but uh, I like that price at 79 cents. I like where the float is. Float's low, the share structure's low, and a lot of times these antibiotic companies do really well ahead of data. And I think Synexis is one to keep an eye on. I don't own shares of that, but I do like it. And these are just many of the um, September plays. Oh, here's one more. Let's see, RPTX. RPTX. Even yes, they've got data in September, um, and so they've got phase 1 data in September. Um, so I'm looking forward to seeing that data. It might have even been pushed to early October. I think it might be early 4Q, but that's
Hmm.
one to that's one to watch. Um, it's a it they've got they've got therapies in cancer. It's phase 1. It's I looked at a Cowan report that talked about, if the phase 1 data is positive, they see a 200% upside, versus if it's not, they see a 30% downside. So the risk reward is definitely skewed to the higher um, upon release of the news, which should be shortly. But that's one to watch, definitely, in terms of um, their oral small molecule inhibitor for ataxia. And we'll see what happens there. But a lot of cash. Company is has RA Capital. They have some big time investors in that stock, and so that's another one with a catalyst that I think, and a small market cap as well, only 65 million. So one to watch.
Absolutely. Well, as usual, Chef, plethora of information for our audience, and really appreciate your insights and walking us through your watch list. That was awesome, as always, and
Thank you so
and
much.
again, really appreciate all of what you bring to the table here. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate Biofarm Catalyst, the tools that are used to, so all of us can become better investors. And just sharing the insights is really important as we continue to look to having a profitable 2025 and ending on a strong note.
Uh, Absolutely. And just a reminder for everybody, you get access to, as an Elite Plus member of Biofarm Catalyst, you'll get access to Chef's watch list. That's exclusive for our Elite Plus members. But if you want to kind of go deeper in terms of Chef's, trading, and knowing a little bit more about, entry prices, exit prices, you know, if you donate to his charity, $300 for the full year, you'll get access to his private Twitter feed, and you will be able to have a lot more information on sort of the trading strategy around a lot of the tickers that he's mentioned. So I just wanted to reiterate that the link to that donation can be accessed via our website on the Biotech Bulls and Breakthroughs podcast. So just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that and reiterate that point. And then finally, as always, this was a venture that we started a couple months ago. We really want to keep it going. The more views, the more likes, the more comments, the more subscriptions to our channel we get, the better. So we can keep bringing you guys some great content. So if you like what we're putting out there, please please comment, please subscribe to the channel. And as always, really appreciate you taking the time to listen. So thanks so much, guys. And thanks again, Sheff.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You guys have a great day. Appreciate you.
Take care. Bye.